And to be honest with you, it sucked. It really freaking sucked. I hated it. If you have an expectation over yourself of, I'm going to make millions of dollars, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to show these people, and you don't get it, man, you feel like crap. You feel sick. You feel disgusted. You say, I should have known that's what they said about me. But if you just do the work because it is who you are.
How's it going, Tyson?
It's incredible. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. This studio rocks, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm getting a little jealous. I'm like, dang, Crockett's stepping it up.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
Proud
of you.
I'm super glad I found this and used this to host the Wealthy Cowboy Show. And Taylor Perky's up there. He's a really good producer, does a great job putting it all together and makes my job easy.
Heck yeah. It looks flash. It's a lot nicer than mine. Let's put it that way.
And I know y'all probably see him on social media a lot. You've really put a lot of effort into putting a positive message out there, a lot of positive content, a lot of good content. You've got a good following. I really like watching all your stuff, and you're always sharing positive things.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and understand how I grew up, motivation's been the big thing for me. Like staying motivated, staying hooked, staying hungry. And it would have been easy for me to go down another path. But my motivation that I put out in the world, or the messages I put out in the world, were the messages that I wish I would have heard when I was coming up.
Right. And that's what I try to do here is teach my past self what I needed to hear back then, which I don't know if I would have listened or not, but at least I'm going to try and put it out there and get through to people. But I really want to talk about that. You've been on a lot of podcasts and you put a lot of your content out, and it always seems like I hear bits and pieces of your story on every one, but I really want to go back. I heard on one, so to when you're little, your parents had split up and you were on a completely different path, living in town and skateboarding and hanging out with maybe the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that. When was that and where was that at? Where were you from?
Yeah, so my dad goes back to working the Cowan Ranch. And the Cowan Ranch is in South Dakota, and they're famous for Sunfrost. Sunfrost is the famous horse that a lot of the barrel horses are kind of out of one way or another nowadays. So my dad actually broke Sunfrost to ride and come off the Cowan Ranch, and his dream was just to be a cowboy. 100% his whole life, die-hard cowboy. My dad closely resembles John Wayne. Not from the way he looks, but the way he acts. He's stern, he's tough. There's not a lot of joking going on. He was raised by a World War II veteran. My grandfather, Normandy Beach, D-Day, first wave, 90% casualty rate. So my grandfather went through that. Plus his dad was murdered when he was young. And so he walked 300 miles from Arkansas to work on a ranch in the panhandle of Oklahoma at 12. So he went through
a lot of manly men.
Yeah, a lot of tough men. And I'm going to get to your question here in just a second. But I want to give a little bit of a backdrop as to why it's so awkward. My granddad, his father got murdered. His mother remarried an alcoholic that used to beat the crap out of him all the time. And he was going to the sale barn, buying horses, buying cows and stuff like that at 10 years old by himself with his own money. He would walk 20 miles to the sale barn, buy these animals, bring them back by himself at 10, 11 years old. Well, at 12, he's like, I'm sick and tired of getting beat on all the time by my stepdad. I'm going to get out of here. So he walks from Arkansas to the panhandle, Oklahoma, where we had family, works on a farm there. Then when he turned 17, enlists in the military, and then ends up going to World War II. Now, he went through World War II, made it out alive, married the love of his life, and had my dad. And my dad was kind of like a rock-hard, stern guy. Honest, shake your hand. He traded more horses than anybody I ever seen, but I'm telling you, if it didn't work out or it wasn't right, he would always take the horse back. Like, he would make it right 100%.
That old school cowboy
that old school cowboy kind of guy. But then I hit this clash of worlds, because him and my mom got together and they didn't work out because my dad liked to work 18 hours a day and liked whiskey, and that's not a good combination for a marriage. And of course, he didn't know any better. Like, judging and understanding like where he came from, he had no idea really how to be a loving, nurturing, kind father, because going back generations, murdered, World War II. My grandfather was a stern, hard man. So that's just how my dad was. He's a product of his environment.
Hard work and be tough.
And so they got divorced. And I lived half the time with my mom, the majority of the time with my mom. And that was an inner city in Kansas City. And so I was introduced to like gangster rap music. You know, still to this day, my kids and I listen to Ice Ice Baby and Hammer Time on the way to school every morning. It's kind of like our thing. But I look at those Hammer pants. I'm like, I used to wear those Hammer pants back in the day and ride skateboards and bikes and run with the wrong crowd and skip school and steal. And I used to do all that stuff, man. And finally, about 5th grade, my dad was like, you need to send that kid to live with me full time. Because I was pretty much full time with my mom until I was 10. On the weekends and stuff, I'd go see my dad. So I'd go from city kid to country boy like that. And I knew how to be a chameleon in both environments. Because when I was with my mom in the city, we had no money. I mean, we would go for weeks without food, weeks without electricity. I got really good at being able to find a friend and go eat at their house because I was literally freaking starving to death. My mom would come home after working at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And she'd be like, honey, we're camping. You know, they turned the power off so we could practice our camping and all this stuff. Little did I know, we just didn't have the money to pay the power bill.
You didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You probably thought it was fun or something.
Yeah, and I had no idea the kind of stress that my mom was going through and dealing with the heartache of divorce, and she's trying to raise 2 kids on her own in the city. And then, you know, dealing with her and my dad they were very volatile. I love my parents, but my only memory of childhood is knockdown, dragouts, screaming and yelling. That's my only memory of a together family. And so I grew up in the city. I would go to live with my dad on the weekends. I got so bad and I was failing every class. My dad was like, this kid needs to come to the country and I'll straighten his ass out. Long story short, I moved full-time with my dad. My brother had gone about 2 years earlier because it was the same pattern for him.
And when was this? You were in like 5th grade?
5th grade, yeah. Yeah, I go to live with my dad, and my dad sets me down and he looks at me rock hard. He says, son, you're going to get straight A's. You're going to be on the honor roll, or there will be hell to pay. And I'm like, yeah, right, Dad. Like, I'm used to doing my own thing. I'm used to running the streets and doing whatever I want. And he said, listen, here's the deal. And my dad would always tap the table with his finger. I don't know if anybody can ever relate to that, but my dad would tap the table. He'd tap the table. He said, son, the deal is you're to be working with me on the ranch training horses, or you are to be studying. I don't care what time I come in. I don't care if it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. You are either to be studying or you are to be working on the ranch. See, my dad didn't believe in like 8 hours of sleep and like optimizing for health. My dad just worked his ass off every single day. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, whatever. So I quickly realized that it was easier to study than it was to work to midnight, cleaning stalls, riding 30 head a day. And so I was just like, okay, I'll check out about 10 o'clock every night. I'll slip up the house. I'll do some studying, maybe act like I'm busy or whatever. And this is like 9, 10 o'clock at night when I slip away, right? He comes waltzing in the house one night, and I don't know what his circumstances were up to that point, but I had fallen asleep studying social studies definitions on the couch. And the next thing I remember, he's got me by the back of the neck and with one hand and a piggin string in the other hand, and he is whipping the shit out of me. And he whipped me so many times that from the back of my knees up to the top of my back was just welts all the way across. Now, I don't know if he was angry from something else or whatever. And to be honest with you, today's society, that's way over the line. But we're talking about, 1992. This is, I'm not saying it was even right then, but it was exactly what I needed in that moment. I went from being learning disability, the dumb kid, the one that everybody made fun of, the kid that was the lowest in the class, to being straight A's, in honor roll, applying myself, because that ass whooping woke me up so much that I was like, I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die. And in my household, coming from where I come from with no money and all that, like, it's very easy to simplify it in your brain and say, I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die. And I really thought, people are like, oh, Dad will kill me, Dad, blah, blah, blah. I really thought my dad would kill me, right? He scared me so much that I thought he maybe would do it. And so I actually, and I love my dad and I'm thankful that he did it. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it put me on a trajectory. And when I was that bullheaded little city kid who liked to steal, liked to thieve, liked to do all that stuff, liked to lie, and my dad whipped me like that, I'm like, I'm going to apply myself at everything. And that stuck with me since I was 12 years old, my entire life. And look at the life I have now. Right. Because of that one ass whipping. It stuck with me my whole life.
when you look back on it, like you said, you can't like, maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but it was the right thing for you. And if it wouldn't have happened, you know, you may have been, went down a whole different path. You know, it's crazy. I mean, you can't regret, like, everything leading up to this point has got you where you are. So
yeah, and I hear people say, "Oh, I'm glad this happened, glad that happened," but I am truly glad my dad whipped my ass, because you take a look at like these kids and a lot of people nowadays, they're getting ruined by social media. They're learning to consume media 6-7 seconds at a time, comparing their real life to the fake life that they see on Instagram, right? And listen, everybody, life is not social media. I have a great social media presence or whatever, but life is not social media. If you're ever comparing what you're going through on a day-to-day existence to what you see on some girl's Instagram or some guy's Instagram or some TikTok or whatever, you're doing it wrong. It's not about that. It's about staying hooked and grinding and understanding that getting better and growing and going to the next level and making millions of dollars and all this stuff has to do with little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit every single day until you look up and you're like, damn, I climbed a mountain one step at a time.
My only goal for this video is to add value to your life. And guess what? If I add value to your life, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share this video. And also, go ahead and leave a comment below. If you think this video rocks, let me know. If you have a topic that you want me to cover another video on, leave it in the comments below. These videos are made to make you better. So I want to serve you at the highest level.
And I can honestly say that path started for me whenever I was with my dad and he whipped my ass, and I'm thankful for it.
So that was your mindset going forward, is I'm going to go 100% or suffer very harsh consequences.
Yeah.
And do you think you started immediately? Were you already roping at that time?
I had roped, but I wasn't roping seriously.
Did that change that also besides your schooling?
You know what clicked for me with the roping side of it was like, I used to hear my dad say, one of his things was like, son, do you know how much that cost? I'd be like, Dad, we need to get a new tractor. We have this old M Farmall that we have to pull start to go work the arena to ride 30 horse. I'm like, Dad, why don't we just get a new tractor? You know how much that costs, son? Dad, why don't we cook this instead of that? Why are we always eating roast and potatoes every single meal? Well, you know how much that costs? Like, he would always bring up how much it costs. So I began to quickly think in my brain, how can I get money? So we go to these rodeos, and my dad was like, hey, if you practice every day, I will pay your fuel and your fees. If you have money above that, then that's yours. If you lose that money, you have to keep a tally of every dime. When you win, you have to pay me back. The first weekend I went to 7 rodeos. I won the very last one. I went to all these rodeos, didn't win anything, threw it in the dirt, blah, 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 blah. Go to the last rodeo, and I'm like 2-2 in the breakaway roping. I'm like 12, 13 years old. And I'm like, holy crap, $242. $242 I won at that rodeo. And I was able to pay all my fees back. And I cleared about $50 that weekend. And I was like, what? This is amazing. It was the money that hooked me to rodeo. It wasn't the, all the people like, I love being a cowboy. I love roping. You know what? I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care about being a cowboy. I didn't care about anything but making money.
It was your ticket out.
It was my ticket out. And then the light bulb began to click. And because of the butt whooping, I had always applied myself hard at whatever I wanted. But when the light bulb went off about making money, I'm like, oh, whoa. Because before that, I was hauling hay and training horses. And that's slow grind money. But making $200 in a 2-second period, I'm like, dude, let's do that more often. And so that's when it was like, okay, I'm going to get better with my roping, get into high school. I want to meet girls. That was my next motivation. Got to get a car, got to have fuel. So then I had started learning how to shoe horses. Okay, all through school, I was shoeing horses. Junior and senior year, I made $30,000 each year shoeing horses, which almost all of it was profit. Before I was even had my driver's license, I would hire the upperclassmen to drive me to my shoeing appointments. And so I began to make money with that. I would save every dime. I call it the immigrant edge, the immigrant mentality. I never spent a dime. I saved it all. And then when I realized, like, hey, the more I apply myself, the more I win, then 4:30 in the morning, guess what? I'm up flanking and tying and I'm practicing. Because my dad came to me and he said, son, I see you cleaning the stalls. I see you feeding the cattle. I see you doing everything you want, but I don't see you working at your craft. I don't see you applying yourself to go be the best calf roper on planet Earth. I'm like, Dad, I'm already working 14, 15 hours a day. He's like, well, if you want what other people don't get, you got to go get it. And you get it by putting in an effort and self-reflecting and say, how can I get better today? So for me, I say, all right, Dad, You going to challenge me? Let's go. I was already living on my own at this point, about 14, 15 years old. I lived on my own on the ranch. I managed the ranch. And then my dad had another house at another place. Okay. So I got up at 4:30 that morning, flank and tied, rode my 2 outside horses, fed all the horses, and went to school. Got out of school, go shoe horses for 2-3 hours, then get home from shoeing horses, and then I would train and practice and help my dad ride whatever he needed to ride. And so that was my pretty much daily life from freshman all the way to senior. But guess what? When I'm senior, I had $30,000 cash in my checking account, a paid-for truck, paid-for trailer, and 2 horses that I could go either sell or go rodeoing on. And I was literally using that craft and that work ethic to set me up for the rodeo life that I wanted.
What was the Horseflesh like? You said y'all rode a bunch. Was it a little bit of everything? Was he just doing calf horses, or was it outside horses? Did y'all own some, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's so funny. My dad is so focused. He's one of those guys, like on our ranch growing up, it was calf horses, calf roping horses. You eat, sleep, and breathe calf roping and calf roping horses all day, every day. My dad's like 74 now, and that's still all he thinks about is calf roping. It's unbelievable. I've never been that focused on one thing in my entire life, but he has maintained that focus, and that's all we did. There was no team roping. My dad was like, if you team rope, you're going to mess your loop up. And I'm like, you know what? Looking back now, I'm like, man, I wish I could have threw one of those heel loops, or wish I could have roped one around the horns. But
there wasn't no all-around cowboy.
Not for me. There wasn't no all-around cowboy. It was main focus, one thing, do it, and do it as good as you possibly can.
And did y'all have cattle outside and ranch to look like really ranched?
Yeah, we had some feeder cattle. So typically how it would work is we'd get, a bunch of calves in that weigh 200 pounds, roughly, give or take. And we would rope them, we would lease them, we would supply them to rodeos. Okay, we'd have jackpots, we'd do all our own stuff. We always had, between 100 and 400 head around at any point. Our ranch was pretty small. So Dad had a bunch of lease land stacked around, and he would take them to whatever weight was most profitable. If it was 300 pounds, 350 pounds, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, whatever. If the market was crap, he would just hang on to them and take them as far as he needed to until he found a point at exit where it was actually profitable. And doing what we did, it was actually hard because the death loss was always so high.
Yeah.
When you're roping calves, the death loss is not 5%. It's a lot higher than that, a lot higher than that. So it was a very hard grind of a living. Riding 20 to 30 horses a day, feeding cattle, you're constant. Sometimes you'd be in the doctor and pen for 3 hours, and the only way that my dad seemed to get ahead was just work more hours. Wasn't good at delegating.
Just always trading time for money, basically.
Didn't delegate. Cowboys are terrible delegators. We just expect somebody to be able to do what we can do, and we hold them to the same standard that we hold ourselves to. And what we don't realize is that it takes 10, 15, 20 years to get the skills to do that. You can't expect some young person coming in. And so there was no delegation. And if there was, it was you better do it fast as possible. And it's so funny that I have a wife that I have, because me and her are like equally yoked. We go 100 miles an hour at everything all the time. I get that from being a little bit ADD and a little bit dyslexic, and my dad saying, hey son, go do this thing for me. Go saddle that horse. Go get this wrench. Go blah, 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 blah. And I better not see you walking. You better do it at a fast pace. And so I think I get that from that. And honestly, at my horse training days when I was younger, I sucked at it because I wanted everything now. I wanted everything fast. And when you're training horses, that doesn't work.
Right. So could he turn that off?
He could.
Yeah. He'd get on a horse and just be patient.
Well, my dad is like a lot of great horsemen. When he's off the horse's back, he'll drop the hammer on you and expect 1,000% all the time. And there's never no motivation like Tyson gives. It's always get your ass in gear, pick yourself up. I don't want to see you whining. But the moment he got on a horse, he became a different man. Like he would tell, enforce. So he'd ask with his hands, then he would tell with his hands, and then he would enforce. So it was always that same pattern. But he became a man that was super slow, calm, kind, and patient on a horse's back. But outside that horse's back, not the same guy. He expected everything now, and I'm thankful for it, to be honest with you. I wish every single kid could grow up on a ranch. Like literally, if kids in the inner city, they were born, whatever they're going through, they just shipped them to the ranch for like the first 5 years and then shipped them back. I think America could be fixed immediately.
Yeah. They have no idea what work is. I mean, I look at people now, and it's like going to a job that starts at 8 or 9 and working till 5, and it's like, that's so easy. I mean, I get up at you know, if I'm going to go work cows and we're going to work 2 hours away, you got to get up at 3, but so you can get out there and get done before. And it's always like fixing to slow down. Once we get this stuff done, it's going to slow down once we get done working these cows, you know, but it never does. You always
because
find
then the
something else
water
to do.
breaks.
Yeah.
You know, then the water breaks, then you got to go freaking become a plumber immediately. And that's the thing about being a cowboy. You got to be able to do everything. You're a veterinarian. You're a plumber. You can do, you can train a horse. You can pack a wheel bearing. You can work on a motor. It's like you can do almost everything when you're a cowboy. And that's why I think cowboy is something that America needs to get back, is because cowboys are badasses. And America has lost that. And I think if we could get our cowboy backbone back a little bit, I think it would help a lot of society, because hard work, grit, determination, honesty, integrity, family unit together, all the things that built America, that's what the cowboy is. And that's what we need to get back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've always had, it's not always real popular with just rodeo cowboys, but I've always had like a grit, I guess. Like I remember when I was little and it was like everybody wants to draw like the best calf, you know, or even in practice, you know, rope just a little pup and go be fast or whatever. And I'm like, if somebody said this one's wild or this one's too big or something, I'm like, I want to go try it. I want to go, you know, and it was like an accomplishment. And I've always liked it. That's why I like going to the double muggins, you know, it's like calf ropers are like scared because the calf's bigger, but you go to double mugging and, you know, it's a little bit of a fight, but it's a big accomplishment once you get them tied down. It's cool. I've always just had that, like, you know, you tell me I can't do something and then I want to push to go
prove you wrong. That's good. I love it.
So what was your trajectory? You're working your ass off. You're having a little success at the rodeos and stuff. And so like you're senior, you got money saved up. Was the plan like go to college, or is it like this rodeo thing's going to be what I'm going to do the rest of my life? Or did you have anything like that in mind?
Well, you know, I had gotten introduced into real estate briefly, you know, at about 15. I kind of learned how to read. And that's one thing we didn't cover. Like growing up, I couldn't read. I couldn't read anything. I was the kid who like would sulk back and be like, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. Tyson, stand up and read in the class. I'm like, dang it. And then I'd be like, the cat. But I was like, why do I need this? This is stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to know this crap. But I was a tough kid, rough around the edges. Mom and dad got together when they bought our ranch. They lived in a barn, dirt floor, no running water. Like that's kind of where I come from. And so I'm like, when you come from that, you don't put an emphasis on knowledge or learning or education or anything like that. You just put an urgency on, hey, can I be tough? Can I survive another day? And so I didn't really read, but my mom bought me a book one day. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Robert Kiyosaki. And I fell in love with it because I didn't know anything about money. I just knew work hard, make money, save it, don't spend it. That's all I knew. It talked about buying assets, getting rid of liabilities, controlling your spending, yada, yada, yada. So then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is like the basic thing if you don't know anything about finance. And then I read Cash Flow Quadrant, which talks about self-employed investor, but you know, all of that. And I gobbled that up. And then I read Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, and then Rich Dad's Guide to Investing in Real Estate. I hit that probably about sophomore, junior, or something like that. Well, I get this book and I'm like, man, that's how I'm going to get it. I got my money rodeoing. Okay, I'm saving. I'm going to have real estate. It's going to get me rich. I'm going to be so rich. And the author of that book was a guy named Dolph DeRoos. And it was forwarded or whatever by Robert Kiyosaki. And Dolph was like, basically, and I think this is terrible advice, be honest. But at the time, he was like, how many rental properties can you have if they make $100 a month each? And I'm like, I don't know. And then the book's like, as many as you can possibly get. And I'm like, okay, so now I need to start buying rental properties. So I go and I start calling when I'm traveling to my horseshoeing appointments. I just got a cell phone. I was a badass, man. High school. This is before cell phones, like people actually had them. So
it was like the big.
Yeah. No, it wasn't the big one. It was a Sprint PCS flip phone I think it was called a Razor or something like that. Okay. And I'd flip it open and I would always make sure that I was on it when I was leaving the high school, whether I was actually on it or not. That way all the girls would see me on my cell phone leaving the school. So I thought that was cool. Anyway, I get this phone, but I would call realtors. And I would say, hey, you know, I'm interested in this property. I drove by, you know, can I come look at it? And I had not a manly voice at 17. I was about that big around, Irish redheaded kid with freckles. And they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, 16. And they're like, I'm sorry, kid, you know, click. They didn't know I had 30 grand in my checking account. Like I could have bought that house cash if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I do that a couple of times and they're finally click. And I'm like, screw this. I don't care. These realtors don't know their head from their ass anyway, and most realtors don't. I'm going to go start breaking into houses, and I'm going to find something that I like, and I'm going to just buy it. And so what I did was I broke into this house one day. I jimmied the lock. I am a master at jimmying a lock and getting into a house if I need to be. I learned how to pick locks with a credit card. Now, if the deadbolt's there, I don't know how to do that. But if I just need to jimmy the lock, I got that, no problem. So I break into this house. I'm stepping over bags of trash. All these houses where I grew up in St. Joe were kind of the same. They all smelled like dog and cat piss, and they were just disgusting. I'm stepping over these bags of trash. And I step over this bag of trash, and the corner of this box inside a plastic bag hits me in the leg. I'm like, man, what is that? That feels interesting. That feels, what's in this bag? So I'm like, man, all this stuff's going to get thrown in the trash anyway. It's an abandoned house. And I opened up the bag and I pull out, and it's a cassette book, Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within. Changed my life. Changed my life. I'm like, I'm stealing this. I haven't stolen a thing in my life ever, but I know this is going to get thrown away.
Tony Robbins
I had no idea who Tony Robbins was, but it was like Unleash the Power Within, and a gigantic man with big, smiley, perfect teeth. And I'm like, dude, I want this. So I took it. I had a cassette player in my truck. I burned through every one of those cassettes. And I realized that I could create the life that I actually wanted. I didn't have to be a victim of circumstance. I could actually create the life that I wanted, whether I want to be a world champion cowboy, make millions of dollars, grow businesses, marry the woman of my dreams, whatever. I could create the life that I wanted. And through that self-development and through the practice in rodeo and the interest in real estate, it created who I am now. And had I not found that book, I look at that as another pivotal point. Had I not found that book by breaking into that house, my life wouldn't look like this at all. And that's the thing. People don't freaking get it. If you want something, you got to get up off your ass and go get it. It's never going to come to you. Nothing is ever going to come to you. You look at anybody that's ultra successful, it didn't fall in their lap unless they're second generation. First generation people, you got to get up off your ass. You got to make it happen. You got to put everything else aside that I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, all this little soft stuff. Trust me, if you didn't have anything to eat, you wouldn't be worrying about any of this other stuff. And go get it. Don't listen to what anybody else says. Go make it happen. Just like me breaking into those houses, not listening to the realtors. You're too young, kid. I actually bought my first rental property at 19 years old. And I built it in a multi-million dollars worth of real estate now at this point. And so if your dream is to do something, just get off your ass and go do it. Don't listen to the naysayers.
Yeah, you didn't listen to the realtors that thought you were just some dumb kid. You were like, okay, that's not working. I'm going to go try this approach and just go do it myself. And you were resourceful instead of worrying about not having the right resources. You were just like, I'll just find another way.
Well, just be a person of action, man. Just be a person of action. That's what cowboys are. We get it done. And with the realtor thing, I mean, I'm still kind of a do-it-yourselfer to this day. I have money to pay a framer, but guess what I'm going to do when I leave this? I'm going to go frame an apartment that I'm going to rent for $2,500 a month, and it's going to make me money. And that's great. And it's probably to my detriment. I don't need to be framing that house. But I kind of like getting out and getting dirty. I'm a little bit blue collar in nature. And so I'm going to go do that. But it's just so easy to win today because everybody is so soft. It just is. I'm not saying I'm the toughest or the most macho. I don't even mean any of that. I'm just talking about putting in effort and getting the rewards. And one thing that I learned that really set my future the right direction was do the damn work without expecting the reward back. Just do it because it's who you are. If you have an expectation over yourself of, I'm going to make millions of dollars, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to show these people, and you don't get it, man, you feel like crap. You feel sick. You feel disgusted. You say, I should have known that's what they said about me. But if you just do the work because it is who you are, then when the rewards come, it's like, damn, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. And so do the work, put in the effort, but don't expect the outcome in 12 months, 24 months, 18 months, whatever. Just do it because it's who you are. Create habits and rituals that stack and match the person that you want to be. And then when the reward comes, it's like, dadgum, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like Alex Hormozi kind of talks about that. I love listening to his stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
But he says it different ways, but basically look at the long term because the goal is not to get into shape. The goal is not to be healthy. The goal is to stay healthy, to stay in shape. It's not a destination. You want to do it throughout your whole life. The goal is not to get married. The goal is to stay married.
You want a little hack?
Yeah.
The hack is never have a destination. Never have a finish line. You know what? I had a destination for myself. I say, hey, I can't wait to be a world champion. I'm going to be a world champion. I'm going to be a world champion. Guess what? It took me a long damn time. I was 32 years old when I became a world champion. At 33, the year after, I was the most miserable human being that I've ever been in my life. My entire life was rooted in being a world champion one time. And when it happened, I was miserable. I thought, what? I worked my entire life for this? And my destination was my downfall, essentially. My destination should have been as many time world champion as I could possibly, 10 time, 20 time. I should have my eyes set so much higher that there really was no destination. It was just the enjoyment of the effort put in day by day by day by day. And because I had that destination, I literally sabotaged the next couple of years.
Hey, do me a favor. If you like this video, let's you and me make a deal. Let's shake hands. Yeah, that good, firm cowboy handshake. If you like this video, do me a favor. Share it with somebody. Subscribe to the channel. And my end of the bargain, I will bring you everything I know about being a high performer, a world champion, and an entrepreneur. If that sounds like a fair deal, go and hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment too, because I'm going to answer every single comment that comes in on this video.
Do you think that you need to set your goals and your dreams that way? Because I've heard you talk about that, like it was like you wanted to make the finals. Well, then you make the finals several times and it's like, okay, I need to start thinking about being a world champion. Whereas if you would have just started out when you were a kid and thinking, I want to be a 40-time world champion or whatever.
The greatest.
So you're never probably going to accomplish that. So you're just always be on the journey.
And that's the hack. I mean, if you live without a destination in mind and you just have good habits, rituals, you live your day and your life perfectly, and you like to work hard, you don't mind doing hard things, then when the outcomes come, it's just byproduct. It's just a byproduct.
You don't tie your emotion to it.
You don't tie your emotion to it. And the other thing is, when I was so young, I just thought NFR guys were like the coolest guys ever. I was just like, man, if I could just make the NFR one time, because occasionally they would come by our ranch and stuff, and my dad trained horses and ropes, so these guys would come by and ride horses, or my dad would help them or whatever, and they would come by and I'm like, man, these guys are like gods to me. These guys are gods. And so I just thought, just make the finals. Just make the finals. Just make the finals.
And you'll be a god.
And you'll be a god. That's awesome. Oh, it's so great. Making the finals don't mean nothing. If you're a young person and you want to make the finals, set your goal at being a damn world champ. Set your goal at being the best there's ever been. Set your goal at something so much higher that making the final seems easy. And if you do that, I promise you, it'll turn out way better.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be a 1 or 2-time NFR guy. That sucks. That's terrible, actually, because you knew there was more potential there than that. You got there once or twice, but you weren't a consistent every time kind of guy. So the main thing is just like set your goals so much higher than that.
So let's go back to, so you're coming out of high school. You had that in your mind. You're gonna become rich through real estate, and were you also thinking, I'm gonna go rodeo now? Did you go to college or?
No, well, yeah, I did gave the college the good old cowboy try for about. I actually attended school for 1 month. I stayed at school for 1 semester, but that was me just using it as a place to live, not a place to go to school. College wasn't for me. And I'm a big believer that college is not for everybody. I think people who want a future can be found through trades. It can be found through skills. It can be found through other forms of education, not just college. Not saying that college is bad for everybody, but it's a trap for a lot. That money that you spend there, you're probably not even going to use it for what you choose to do in life, and you are going to have to pay it back. And so for me, college wasn't for me. I left college because, man, we were drinking and running through sorority houses with our chaps on and nothing else. Like, we were just doing stupid stuff. You know, I'm like, one day I woke up, I was sleeping in my buddy's house on the floor. And the night before, we had ran through a sorority house with our chaps on, nothing else. And the cops got called and all the stuff. And I woke up and I'm just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you say you want to go make the finals and do this stuff and be a great calf roper. Like, what are you doing? And that day was like a light switch. I knew it was over for me. I was like, nah, this ain't for me. I'm not here to play. I'm not here to party. I want to get ahead. I want to make something of myself. And I went rodeoing. Right after that, I went rodeoing for a whole year. And that $30,000 I had saved up, I blew every damn dime of it. Every dime was gone at the end of that year.
So you weren't instant success.
No, blew every dime that year. Come back. I'm about 18, graduate high school, 19, go to college, do that whole thing, buy my permit. The end of that year, I'm about 20. I had spent my entire life savings because I made the fatal mistake of going rodeoing with a truck that had a lot of miles on it. And I was driving from the tip of Florida to Oregon, and that thing broke down all the freaking time. And so I spent a large amount of money in a vehicle that was just a cash drain. But I come back, I've got no money. I sell my good horse to an individual in Tennessee, and I start a welding business because I could weld. And so that's what I did for the next couple of years. I eventually sold the welding business after a couple of years to my partner. I had $10,000 in profit off the sale of the business, and I commenced to blowing that all while rodeoing as well. So I lost everything twice, except the second time I had discovered credit cards. And I'd got a $20,000 line of credit, $15,000 from my bank and $5,000 on a credit card. And I maxed them both out rodeoing. And then I finally, eventually turned it around after failing miserably several times.
The second time when you lost it again, what did you do then? Were you still just like, I can rope my way out of this? Or did you go back to working?
I battled the rodeo, then work, then rodeo, then work. And the kiss of death for rodeo cowboys happen to come home and go to work because you break your momentum. If you're a rodeo cowboy and you want to make it, you need to do whatever you can do to stay on the road, because staying on the road keeps you in that momentum, keeps you in the mix. But if you run out of money, then you got to come home, train a horse, shoe a horse, weld, do whatever it is you do to make some more money, then go spend it again. And you break that momentum and you pay this constant like teeter-totter, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out. And for me, I played that game until one day I was like, I'm going to make it. I don't give a shit what happens. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care how hard it is. At that point, I had a mentor, Fred Brown, a brilliant man from Washington who was kind of like a father figure to me. And I called him and I'm about to cry in the backseat of my truck. I'm like, Fred, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got $255 to my name. I've spent all my money. I spent all my credit line. It's maxed out. And Fred said to me, just go make a good run tomorrow. He said, you know what? No matter what happens, you'll figure it out. He's a happy-go-lucky guy and kind of chuckle. He's like, you'll figure it out. He's like, trust me, you'll figure it out. You'll be good. And my dad and I had a rocky relationship, but I called my dad and I was like, Dad, what do I do? He's like, you focus on the basics, son. You score good, you ride your horse, you make a good run, and the wind will take care of itself. And that was like my dad. He was like Mr. Fundamentals. And this other guy was like Mr. Mindset. Don't worry about it all, but you'll get through it. Well, the next day, I'm in Canada. That night I slept in the backseat of my truck because I didn't have anywhere else to stay. I had $255 in my checking account, and I'm at Innisfail, Alberta. And I ended up winning third in the next go-round of competition. I was like 7-9 or something like that, 1/3. And I was like 8-6 on my second one. I think I won like 5th or 6th in the round and ended up second overall, won $4,500. And I was like, damn, I love rodeo. Let's go, baby. And I ended up being the first American to win a Canadian championship at the end of that year. I paid all my credit cards off at the end of that year. And it was amazing. I had $10,000 the next season, 2007, to go rodeoing on. And yeah, the rest is history. I made the finals pretty much every year after that I rodeoed.
Did the mindset deal, was that kind of when it came in, or were you already thinking about that mental game?
Yeah, I was thinking about mental toughness mindset, but Fred Brown from Washington was the man that really taught me about the mind. I watched Fred. He was a developer of artificial intelligence. I mean, in 2005, he was doing what your iPhone does now. I mean, we're talking 19 years ago. And so he was doing it for, the United States government and other big corporations and stuff at that point. And he's just a calf roper. Like, I'm like, wait a second, a calf roper is into technology and into all this stuff. And Fred he is a brilliant man. He's so smart. I mean, I don't know what, like, I've had an IQ test multiple times and I hit that like average guy kind of category, but Fred would probably be off the charts. He could convince me that I was the baddest son of a buck on planet Earth at any given point at any time. I mean, he could just convince me, you're the best in the world, Tyson. There's nobody as good as you. He believed in me so much that I forgot that I didn't believe in myself. And every person needs that. Every person needs that voice in there saying, you got what it takes. You got the grit. You got the speed. You have every tool to be successful. I didn't believe it, but he put that belief in me. He would say things to me like, Tyson, you're the fastest. Tyson, nobody can ride a horse the way you can ride. Golly, you're so good with your pig and string that you're a machine. When you get him on the ground, it's over. And so he built the belief in me that I didn't even know I had. And every single rodeo athlete needs that.
Yeah, it's hard. I never went pro rodeoing, but going to the college rodeos and the amateur rodeos and stuff when I was in college, and I wanted to go. That was fun. So we would go as much as we could, a couple, 3 weekend or whatever it was. And then like 4th of July run, you go to all the amateur rodeos in Texas, you can hit 5 or 6 or something. And it sucks whenever you miss at the first one or break out, or the worst is missing because you don't have anything to talk about. You're just like, what happened? This guy, you ask somebody what happened on their run. They're like, man, I had him, my calf kicked, I could have turned him around better, blah, blah, blah. And then if you just miss, you're like, well, I should have caught him first. That probably would have helped. And then I could have made other mistakes or whatever. Yeah. Well, but it's hard to get out of that. You're just out there and you got 5 more rodeos and you're just like, I just want it to be over already.
Yeah. There's some mental toughness things I teach in one of my programs, and I'm fixing to come out with a whole thing for mental toughness for rodeo athletes. But one of the hardest things in rodeo is that if you're going to a string of rodeos and there's no time to practice in between, you miss your first one, you break a barrier, you fall off your horse, you get bucked off, whatever it is for you. If you don't start off good on that run, it's hard to get any kind of momentum because then you're fighting your head. What I do is I compartmentalize every competition. So if I go to the first one, it doesn't go good, I'm going to go get quiet. I'm going to go get by myself. I'm going to watch my highlight reel, which I'm sure you've probably heard me talk about a time or two. It's a compilation of runs that I watch over and over and over on amazing audio that puts the belief back in me so I don't think about the miss that I just had. Okay. I watch my highlight reel, then I visualize what I want to do, then I get some positive movement, and then I get ready to go attack again. And what most people don't do is they don't do that. And they sit there, they make their first run, say they're going to 7 rodeos, they make their first run, their first ride, whatever, it doesn't go right, they get bucked off, whatever happens. Then they think about that screw up all the way up until the next rodeo, and then guess what happens? Well, no crap, you idiot. You fed your mind the negativity from the first competition for the last 24 hours, and then you expect yourself to go win? No, it's not the way it works. You have to break that off and kick it out and regain momentum. That's why people like to go to the practice pen in between rodeos. All they're searching for is positive reinforcement and momentum. And so
if you're a person who's struggling with getting the momentum and getting the ball rolling, I have something amazing for you. It's called the Cowboy Challenge. Down in the description below, I want you to accept the challenge, the Cowboy Challenge, to give you momentum, to give you resiliency, to give you mental toughness, to go on and chase life. And you can check that out. There's also a ton of free stuff in the description below.
From like the time I was like 31 to I think I rodeoed hard to about 37, I didn't practice hardly at all in the summer. I mean, like literally zero. I would make micro adjustments from one run to the next run, either with myself or with my horse to get the outcome that I wanted. And I did enough mental work that I didn't even have to. And had I known that so much earlier on in my career, I think honestly I could have had multiple gold buckles, because I came close to multiple gold buckles, but only capitalized one time out of 5. So, ifs and buts are candy nuts, and we'd all have a Merry Christmas if we could go back in time. But I think that's one thing that's super hard for rodeo athletes, and they just can't seem to figure it out.
Yeah, that mind deal. And I think a lot of people don't want to spend the time or don't think about it, or maybe don't even know about it. But I think that is a huge, huge thing, because anybody can go learn the fundamentals. I mean, I roped every day after school in high school and through junior high, and that didn't mean that I was going to win. And I think a lot of it was mind. There's variables with your horse and stuff like that. But if you go do the fundamentals, you should be able to win. If you can control it up here, just go make the practice pin run. Just don't make any mistakes.
You should be able to, but when the added pressure of this rodeo pays $5,000 and I'm broke, or your parents whispering in your ear saying, well, I told you how you should be, and your parent didn't even rodeo, never even rode a horse or roped. And then you add in the pressure of, oh, you drew number 13. That sucker was so good. I won the rodeo last week. But what I'm saying is the outside pressure of the world. When you add that in, it's hard to handle. Whereas in the practice pen, you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
You don't have any of that. So yes, the fundamentals may be good in the practice pen, but when you go to the rodeo, you can't handle it mentally. And so mental, the mindset, the attitude, this right here ends up being the bottleneck of everything. We talk about in money and in business and delegation being the bottleneck of everything. If you're the bottleneck of everything in your business, then you're going to have a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. You're going to work 18 hours a day. If you don't have good systems, processes, procedures, great delegation to people, then it's all going to flow through to you. In rodeo, it's the same thing. The bottleneck of everything is this right here. Because if your mechanics are awesome, that's great. But if you can't manage this, you're never going to win. That's why very few people get to the top, and a lot of people should.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I really, like I said, I roped every day. Like, went through the fundamentals, learned it all. And then I really, looking back, don't think I even learned how to rope and ride my horse until I started day working and got a deal. We were taking care of some cattle on wheat, and it's a different thing. The pressure's off. And you're in different positions and different situations, and you actually got to learn how to rope and position your horse, And then it's like now I can go back to roping, and I'm in a whole different state of mind in my head, and then also my mechanics are a lot different. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, but it seems like it's so easy to catch now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of calf ropers that couldn't rope a damn thing out there in the pasture. Let's put it that way. And this guy's one of them. I mean, I can hang it on one, and I have, but it is a lot different roping out in a pasture. If you're dodging cactus and you're going through creeks and you're dodging trees, trying to catch something going wide open that's all over the place, then roping a calf in an arena. It's so different. And people think that like, oh, this Tyson, he's a world champion roper. He can just go ahead and hang it on this year going 900 miles an hour. Well, my butt might be puckered tight going wide open across the pasture, and I might get in my own head a little bit. Whereas in the arena, it's not that way. So there are different types of roping. I don't care if you're a ranch cowboy or a calf roper or a team roper. I mean, the swing is completely different. The delivery is different. Everything's different. But those ranch cowboys, man, from a rodeo perspective, they're not clean. It's not tight. It's not a sharp neck shot like we would say in calf roping. But guess what? When we go to their environment, we're probably not as accurate either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was always the case whenever I first started doing that stuff. It was like, why'd you miss? You're a calf roper. Why didn't you rope that calf? And it's like, it's the same thing. It was like, it's a completely different thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think it made me better. And now, nowadays, like I'm not going competitively roping all the time, but when we do rope at the house and have kids come over and stuff, I'm very big on, my favorite thing to do is pin rope.
Yeah.
And that way you learn how to read your cattle, because like in our setup, they don't want to drive, or if you put them in the wrong situation, they're going to roll back on you and go back to the back of the pen. So you got to read your cattle, actually cowboy a little bit, and actually set your shot up, whether you're, and I breakaway and I knot rope and I tie down all that way. And then of course, coming out of the box is a different deal, and you got to get good at that. But it's super big on my program to actually learn how to be a cowboy about it and be able to do those different things in different situations.
Man, I tell you, that's again, going back to America, what we need right now, we need to be able to handle things in a lot of different situations. And that's one thing about a cowboy is he will always win. He will adapt. He will make it work. He will make it work with what tools he has, and you adapt and you win and you get up and go get the job done. If I need to go day work, I can figure it out. If I need to change a tire, I can figure it out. I mean, there's been times when I've been rodeoing and I blow a tire out and I need to get to this daggum rodeo, right? I blow this tire out on the side of the road. Freaking, I don't have a jack. I have a star wrench. I don't have a jack. Well, what can I do? Oh, crap. I got my shoe and hammer in there. Let's pull over into the soft dirt and dig a hole this deep with my shoe and hammer, and then pull the tire off and stick the new one on. Yeah, it took 5 times as long, but guess what most people would do? They would sit on their ass on the side of the road and they would say, I better call somebody to come help me. I need somebody to come help me. I can't do it. When they had everything they needed to do it, they just needed to get creative. And and that's one thing about cowboy is you just get the job done. You get it done, whatever it takes. And I think that, people would get out of their head a little bit more if they would focus on how to get to the finish line, not who can do it for them.
Yeah, and I saw a post about it the other day. I think I shared it, and I really can't remember the whole gist of it, but basically it was talking about being a man, and a man's job is to figure it out. When you're with your wife or your girlfriend or something like that, or get in a worse situation, a shooting, or, like danger, it's who does everybody look to? They look to a man, and then they expect him to have the answers, And it's like you sit there and think, and you're like, just like you're saying, you got to get resourceful. It's like they're not shooting ideas at you. They're like, what are we going to do? And then you got to come up with something, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. You got to go take action.
Well, and you see them old clips on Instagram or whatever is like society in 1945, and everybody's like super lean, super in shape. Yeah, because those guys were rock hard some bitches. Let's be clear. They had to go serve, and they had to fight, and they had to die for the country. And we have gotten so far away from that in our civilized, easy everything Western culture that I think it could be really bad someday. You got to be ready. And I'm not Mr. Masculine, the toughest guy in the group, but I know that if things were to happen, I could take care of my family.
Right.
And I think that's what every person should need out there is like, If you need to take care of your family, if you need to hunt a deer, if you need to grow something, if you need to go fishing, if you need to butcher a calf, like you could just get it done and live the kind of lifestyle you want without needing a handout. When I was young, my mom, she didn't know about like food stamps or government subsidies or anything like that. And I don't know why she didn't, but we would literally go without food for like weeks on end without really having anything. I mean, I might have saltine, cracker and some peanut butter or a packet of top ramen. Like we just didn't have food. And my mom came to me a few years ago and she's like, I got to apologize, honey. I'm like, what are you talking about, Mom? She's like, I got to apologize. I'm like, why? She said, because there were government programs that could have gave us food to eat. She's like, I just didn't know about it. And I am glad that she didn't take any handouts, because everything I do, I don't ever look for a handout for anybody. Little secret that I learned many years ago was that do more than you get paid for. Try to just really do your best to deliver above what you're paid for. If you do that, it's sometimes very hard, but if you do that, everything seems easier. Don't just do the bare minimum. Do above and beyond. And that's what I said earlier, is so easy to win nowadays. If you do above and beyond what people ask for, then they're like, holy crap, that guy answered the phone at 10 o'clock at night, or that guy, whatever. It's like, I broke a windshield out of my truck yesterday, and I call some glass company. We can get to you in 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't know what the weather's going to do the next 2 weeks in Texas. Like, I need you here at midnight. I need you here yesterday. What are you, 2 weeks? What are you talking about? And people who are cowboys that get it done, that aren't looking for handouts, like, you just go above and beyond in everything. Could you imagine if a cow was going into labor and you needed to pull that calf and you're like, you know what? It's past 5 o'clock. I'll check on them tomorrow. Yeah. They're going to die. They're going to die. And I'm a big believer in cowboy, but that's why we're the best culture on planet Earth. Because it doesn't matter what time. It doesn't matter what the conditions are. If it's snowing, if it's raining, if it's sleeting, we just get in there and we get it done. And we've lost that in America. We really have. We've lost it. I think it needs to come back. So I'll stop ranting. Go on with your next question.
Let's get back to rodeo. And you won the Canadian finals. And after that kind of mindset change, when that turned around, was it all just your mindset? Was there a horse change or anything like that?
Yeah. So Fred Brown, my mentor, had a really good old horse at that point. His name was Rolex. Brad Goodrich had made the finals on him, I believe, in 2004. And he was old school horse. Stopped all over. Every calf that you got to on the end of the rope was coming up off the ground. You didn't pop him around. There was none of that. And so he gave me that horse to rodeo on. No mount money, nothing. He knew how financially strapped I was. And when I was sleeping in the backseat of my truck, I just started hauling Rolex. He was dragging a little bit, and we just weren't getting things figured out. And I called him. I called my dad. And the next day, it was like a light switch. I started winning. That horse, I had finally figured out kind of his thing. Like, you couldn't ever tie him up. You never could tie this horse up. He would destroy everything. And he would drag, so he didn't ever require a jerk line or much of a jerk line. And I placed at 19 out of the next 20 rodeos on that horse. He was an old seasoned calf horse that did his job every time and scored like a freaking statue. And those horses are worth their weight in gold. And took me to the Canadian finals, won the Canadian championship on him that year. But it was horsepower and mindset. It was, to be honest with you, the people are like, what does it take to be a great rodeo athlete? Does it take horses? No, it takes everything.
Yeah.
It takes everything. It takes a great mindset. It takes a badass horse. It takes good mechanics. It takes not making mistakes. It takes being able to handle the pressure. And for me, at that point, that next day when I went to that rodeo, everything finally came together after 10 years of working my ass off. That's what it takes. But I mean, horsepower makes it easier to have a good head, to believe in yourself. And so that horse, I think he was like 18 at that point. He really is what got me to the next level. And then I went and made the NFR on him the next year.
I want to back up and then we'll get back into that. But you keep mentioning him. So Fred Brown, how did that come about? Because he's in Washington,
Yeah,
right?
Washington State.
And you're
Missouri boy.
Yeah. So how did y'all meet up?
Yeah, so I'm a country boy from the cornfields of Missouri. There's not much out there. Rural communities, not so different than, out here where I live now in Texas. But my dad and I just didn't get along. I love my dad. I think the one thing that for our relationship, not just, it has nothing to do, because there's always two sides to every story, right? After I got my butt whooped by my dad when I was young, it put me on this path. But it put me on the path of self-reliance. I don't need anybody. I could do it all myself. That's what I would say. I can do it all myself. I don't need any help. And
which
again,
isn't always good.
Which is not always good. But as a young man, I didn't value time, and I would just work 18 hours a day, 19 hours a day. Everything I did revolved around roping, riding, winning, working, making money. And so when I got into my teens, my dad and I really butted heads. Like I had my own vision of what I wanted for my life. He had his vision, and my dad was kind of like an iron fist kind of guy. It's my way or the highway, son. And again, at 14, I moved on to the ranch, and he didn't live on the ranch. So I had a lot of freedom. I was living on my own meals, my own laundry. I mean, everything myself at 14 on. And I just didn't get along. So fast forward, we had rodeoed through high school, saving my money, working hard, training horses, selling horses, get into my first year of pro rodeo. I spend everything. And then I come back, I sell my good horse, and I buy a welding rig, and I go welding. And that really pissed my dad off, because that point was the first moment where I was like not going to rope anymore. I was actually going to be done. I was fed up with it. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm going to be a businessman. And what that meant was I just worked 24/7. And the first year I paid myself $5,000. That was my first check for 1 year's worth of working 14 to 18 hours a day was $5,000, because all the money went back into the business. Mm-hmm. And I had a partner, great guy, Caleb. Shout out to Caleb. I don't know if he'll ever watch this, but it kind of came to a boiling point where like I was not fulfilled. I'd worked my tail off. My dream was to be an NFR cowboy. Caleb and I had worked on this business, and we both had starved. I said, Caleb, I want to go chase my passion, and I want to make the national finals. He said, okay, I'll buy you out. And he was so graceful with it. And we didn't have money to buy me out either. Like, he was so graceful with buying me out. Now, buying me out wasn't like, we like to see on the internet, I sold my business for $100 million and now I've got it set. Huh. No, this was like a buyout for 10 grand and take the debt. Mm-hmm. That was kind of what it was. So he gave me 10 grand, which was about half of what I put in to start with. And so as is, I worked for 2 years and lost money, but he was graceful enough to do that. And I go to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm leaving. And he'd been drinking a little bit. And man, it's a hard thing to even talk about or relive, but he would motivate me by, you're never going to make it. You're not good enough. You'll never make it. And he didn't mean that. I know he didn't mean that. That's just the language he heard from his dad. Mm-hmm. And it was passed down through the generations. And we ended up getting into this huge fight. And it's the only time I ever laid hands on my dad. Basically, it ended up, and I had my hands were like around his throat, and I was choking him to death. And a guy came into the room and pulled us apart. And I left. And I wanted to get as far away from Missouri as I could possibly get. And I moved to Washington State. I had met a guy named Fred Brown a couple years earlier when I was out there rodeoing. And he gave me an open door. And the reason he gave me an open door was because he seen something in me that I didn't see in myself, but he's seen a young man who's willing to work his ass off, that had the talent. So Fred had like a 10,000 square foot house, $1 million indoor riding arena. Like he had all this stuff, and I'm like, holy cow, how can a cowboy have this kind of stuff? So when he would get home from working, I would make sure all the horses saddled, all the stalls were cleaned, all the cattle were up, everything was immaculate, the barn was swept, cleaned out. I mean, there was just nothing that he had to think about. Like I had everything. Well, after a week of that, he's like, holy crap, like nobody else does this. So he wanted to pour on me. And when I left that year, he said, if you ever have a situation you want to come back, I'll hire you. I get with my dad. We have a big knockdown drag out. I don't ever want to see him again. I pack everything I could into my truck that I owned that night, and I left, and I never went back. And I ended up sleeping on my brother's couch. Shout out to him for a few months and I would try to get there late at night after his wife and kids went to bed. They were graceful enough to let me sleep there. Never said, you dirty, no good SOB, why are you sleeping on my couch? Like they were just nice to me. And to be honest with you, it sucked. It really freaking sucked. I hated it, but I wanted a way out. And that's why I'm so passionate now, is because when I was in that situation that was so tough, I had people there who were willing to help me, but very few people that were like motivating me and lifting me and pushing me. And that's why I put so much out on social. But I was able to scrape and claw, and I moved out to the Northwest. And that's how I got hooked up with Fred, was because, I just had a complete failure where I was at. It was about 21 or 22 at that point. By 24, 25, I was on top of the world again, but it was a lot of years of struggle. That's for sure.
Yeah, and he helped you get through all that and get back on your feet.
Yeah, Fred did, but so many people did. My partner buying me out. My brother let me sleep on his couch. The banker for allowing me to buy a brand new truck. Thankful enough that I could sleep in the back of it.
Yeah.
It was high interest, but he gave me the loan. I just see a lot of people that believed in me probably when I didn't believe in myself, and they're just being good people. It's what cowboys do. In small communities, that's what people do. They help each other out, especially if they see somebody that really wants to get better.
And so Fred really helped you out and all those other people and got you on the right track. Yep. And like you said, you're in the back of your truck and it kind of turned around there. You won the Canadian finals and then started making the NFR. And like you said, you were right there several years. Yeah. And I remember, this is my perception. I remember seeing you and I put you on my fantasy team a lot. Yeah. And I was like, man, Tyson goes down there and ties them fast. And you were never timing six. You were always just consistent, solid, run them down there, blow through them further down the pin than anybody else, usually though. Yeah. Is that how you saw yourself? Was that kind of in your mind, or is that just how it happened?
No, that's kind of my roping style. My roping style was always to go, and it wasn't my plan to go an extra swing, but I trained so many horses that you have to set your go up on. You have to give the horse the right position. I trained so many horses my whole life that horsemanship was in front of trying to get them roped as fast as possible. And it probably, from a horsemanship, it helped me keep good horses through my whole career. I wasn't trading horses every year like a lot of people were. Yeah. But my MO was go a swing further and be 7.5. Go 2 swings further, be 7.7. If I get a 2-swing throw, I can be 7.1, 7.2, but I wasn't a 6-second guy. And honestly, back then, 6-second runs didn't really exist that much. Yeah. 97, I'm going way back for the OG calf ropers. In 97, there was probably one of the best go-rounds of calf rope in history. And Jeff Chapman, Blair Burke, and Fred Whitfield all had broke their record in one go-round of calf roping. And a couple days earlier than that, Ronnie Hyde had broken the record at 7 flat. So there was like 4 NFR breaks, but those guys were all in the 6-second range. But other than that, man, you didn't see 6-second runs like you do nowadays. Calves were bigger, calves were stronger, starts were longer. And my MO was just to beat them on the ground. Don't screw up. Just be a machine. It worked for me. Yeah. Everybody's got their own style. Shad hangs it on them quick. Joe always would reach. But my style was run in the hole, set up my go, and beat them on the ground.
And there's something to be said about that. Like you said, you're not changing horses, because when you do that, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, like if you go to reaching and you're just thinking about winning, you're going to win a lot, but you're also going to, if you don't have a super great horse under you, you're going to mess them up. Yeah. When you, especially, these guys I see, you're just like jumping off, they're roping and going, and it doesn't always look the best, but it's fast. And your deal was always just like a solid run, just pretty as could be. You couldn't fault you for any mistakes. It's just a little bit longer.
Yeah. And that's why, out of 130 runs at the national finals, I think I've got 6 or 7 go-round wins. It wasn't. But I wasn't a Cody.
You always win something in the average.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I never. If I could have one, I got 2 regrets with my rodeo career. Number 1 is I didn't win more than 1 world championship. Number 2 was that I never won the average. I won 2nd. I won 3rd. I won 4th. I won 2nd again. Like I was always in the top of the average, but I never won it. Yeah. Even the year I won the world, I won 2nd in the average that year for the 2nd or 3rd time of my career. But it is what it is. We all got regrets and things we wanted to do better. But rodeo was incredible for me. Yeah. It really has introduced me to some of the most influential people on planet Earth, and has set up, what I want to do after rodeo and help build our businesses and all that stuff. And it's just, rodeo is such a good thing. Yeah. I wish more people could experience it.
Oh yeah, for sure. The people are the coolest thing, I think. Yeah. And the relationships you develop out there rodeoing. The year that you won it. So was there anything that changed? Like, did you change in your mind? You're like, I'm tired of not going out there and not winning, just making runs. I'm going to go at them. Or did you change your horse or your swing? Or
Nico. I got my bay horse, Nico. He was incredible. Again, a couple of things. Number 1, my wife had started I gotten married, and my wife had started making me write down what I wanted in my life. And I put it on the fridge. I put it on my bathroom mirror. I put it in my truck, put it in anywhere I was at. It was there. I will be a world champion. When she made me write that down and put it on, I felt phony. I'm like, I'm an NFR guy every year, but I'm not a world champion. I couldn't even say it. Like, it couldn't even come out of my mouth. And honestly, believe it, I couldn't say it. But over time, I began to kind of feel it. And then I had met a guy named Jay Novacek, 3-time Super Bowl champ with the Dallas Cowboys, at a public appearance that he and I were both working with the same company. And I got to meet him and his wife, and nothing major, but our wives exchanged numbers. And so when we left, I'd come off a season. It wasn't the greatest, but maybe top 10 in the world or whatever, but not where I wanted to be. I said, I'm looking for a sports psychologist. I need somebody to really, really help me with my mind. And I said, hey, honey, you know that Jay Novacek guy? I said, don't you have his wife's phone number? She said, yeah. I said, would you shoot her a text and ask her? And she did. And Amy hooked me up with Jay. And so I get on the phone call with Jay, and I'm nervous because I was a Cowboys fan as a little kid. I mean, who wasn't a Cowboys fan in the 90s?
America's team.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, dang. And I'm kind of nervous because I was a kid and he was legendary, MVP of the Super Bowl, and all this stuff. And I call him, I say, hey, I'm looking for a sports psychologist, somebody that can really help me with my mind to go to the next level with my roping and stuff. And he's like, well, I don't know any sports psychologists. He said, but I'll help you. Like that. And I'm like inside, I'm like jumping out of my skin. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And Jay's real calm and he's not as animated as say I am or whatever. And so I go to his house and I sit down and we're talking and I'm thinking like, here's my flank and blah, blah, I'm thinking all mechanical.
Yeah.
He sits down, he looks at me, he looks up, he says, how's your relationship with your dad? And I was like, and to be honest with you, I get emotional talking about it because my relationship with my dad was really bad. Really bad. Really bad. I don't wish it on anybody. And Jay seen that really quick. He said, when you forgive your father, you'll be a world champ. Excuse me. The day that I forgave my dad, I would go to Jay's house. He would spend 4 hours with me, just 4 hours with me, talking about the mind. And then we'd work out and stuff too. But it's just incredible that a person of his stature would spend that much time with somebody like me, because I don't think of myself as like anybody special. And never asked for a dime, by the way. Wouldn't accept money. I tried to pay, wouldn't let me pay him. He's a good man. So he says, I got to go work on a cabin out there at one of his hunting ranches. He said, you want to come out and hunt? I said, well, I haven't hunted since high school, but do you need any work done? Can I help, build? Or he's like, yeah, I need to clean a bunch of stuff and do a little work on my cabin. And it's out in the middle of nowhere in Texas. So we go out there without cell phone service. Guess who calls? My dad calls. I'm like, how's this call coming through? I don't know, but I'm going to answer it because my dad never calls me. I mean, he's just not the kind of guy that calls. Mm-hmm. So we talk a little bit. I say, hey, Dad, I just want you to know that I forgive you for everything. And I hope you can forgive me for everything I've done to you, because it's always a two-way street. It's not just a one-way street. And we talked and we hashed things out. And the next year I'm a world champ. It was incredible. Had a great horse. I bought the great horse, Nico. The year before, 2015, I had tied 2 calves in 6 at the NFR. Never done that before. 1 in 6.8, 1 in 6.7, fastest run of my life, which, by the way, was the most textbook run I've ever had. The next year, I win the world championship on him, and the rest is history after that. To answer your question, it was a lot of things. Yeah. It was the forgiveness of my father. It was the great mentor in Jay Novacek. It was the great horse. It was a wife that believed in me. Again, everybody always wants to know, like, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? Yeah. It's not one thing. It's never one thing. It's about a lot of things coming together.
You had a lot of people in your corner, and then after the relationship with your dad, I'm sure you called him all the time after that too to help you.
Yeah, I love my dad to death, and my brothers. I grew up with 3 brothers. It was my dad and us 3 boys and a hired man. There was no women in our house at all whatsoever growing up. And if I was going to battle, I know they would battle with me, no matter what. Do we call each other every day? Hey, I love you. How you doing? No, we don't do that. It's just not our family. Yeah. But we get along great now. He's still riding freaking horses, 74 years old. He's still riding horses every day after multiple broken legs, broken pelvis, broken arm. I mean, he's just been epitome of a cowboy. He has no cartilage in his elbows, and he has a fake knee now and no cartilage in his other knee, and he's still riding horses every day. So it was a compilation of a lot of things coming together for me, but that line of I can do it all myself, that thing I thought as a kid, couldn't have been the furthest from the truth.
Right.
You need people. And you need to love people. Mm-hmm. You need to be kind to people and nice to people, but you also need to be firm enough to kick them in the ass to help motivate them to get them ahead too. And one thing I did learn from the little bit of coaching that I've done is you need to be the person that you need to be in the moment that you're in. If I need to motivate you and I can tell you're slacking, And I need to be able to get at you a little bit and say, hey, pull your head out of your ass. Let's go. You can be better than this. But emotionally, if you're a wreck and you've done everything right and you're still not winning, then I'd be like, hey man, just stay hooked. You got this. That perseverance that you've had is going to get you where you need to go. You just need more time. You understand?
Yeah.
And so it's very important to be what you need to be in the moment that you're in, to be able to read surroundings to get that done.
Do me a favor, like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I truly will read every single comment on this video. And guess what? If you want to watch another amazing video, check this one out right here. I know that it will serve your life. Take care. Adios.